Hello and welcome to another video on Procreate Dreams. In this video I'm going to demonstrate for you how you can create rigging and animation like this. How we could create what would be equivalent to rigging for something like this vehicle. And I'm gonna walk you through the process of using the right tools for making the animation in the most intuitive way. But before I dig into that, I want to thank everyone who commented, brought up questions, or complimented my previous video. I'm really happy that people liked it, and I plan on making more. I just take some time until I get really to the right quality that I aim to always produce. So in the meantime, any questions you have, please feel free to comment them or bring them up. We're all still learning the software. The other thing is that I'm pretty happy that Procreate team really quickly fixed the rendering issue. And lastly, this is important for this tutorial to make this disclaimer. I am going to introduce you to process without pre-calculated moves. I did try out all the tools and I know what I want to do, but I also know that there will be some issues that I'm going to be demonstrating along the process, because the worst thing that happens when you're watching a demo or tutorial is when you watch a perfectly smooth tutorial, you go to execute and like, why is this not working? So I aim to also cover the issues that you will be facing so you wouldn't be surprised, and also in order for you to learn the software pretty well. Just like the previous video, I'm going to be using both Procreate and Procreate Dreams. Procreate is for the drawing, and then Procreate Dreams is for the editing process and the animation and the rigging maybe. So I'm gonna start by creating a new scene, and I'm gonna go with widescreen, hit empty, and now it's ready. Now I can swipe with 4 fingers, and I'm going to go to the layers here. So what I do have here is a vehicle that I made, and I have an orthographic view and perspective. So I just felt like orthographic would be fun, but perspective would be also cool to demonstrate. In the setup of this vehicle, I have the track here, and my aim is to make the body, which is this here, to be kind of vibrating. So in order for that vibration to look realistic, I made a cushion here, so when it sort of vibrates up and down, it would still not show like empty, because that would be kind of bad. I'm going to select both layers, and to do so, let me just hide the other one so you don't get confused. To do so in Procreate, you just swipe right this way, from left to right. Now I have both layers selected. So it's important before you do the step that you have the Procreate Dreams scene set up, so it would have the right aspect ratio and everything. So now that I have that scene available, now I can drag those layers. And this is the kind of the annoying part sometimes. It just like ducks down and like it doesn't really. So the key trick is for making these to move the way you want. Once you hold and they move a little bit, you kind of move them quick. Now I could either swipe up, which as you can see is a little tricky, or instead of swiping up, you can also click on the home button, which is going to be a lot easier and consistent. Now here's a problem that it's kind of annoying. Once I drop this, because it has higher resolution than the scene here, it's coming a little bit larger, which is fine. But the first issue that I don't like right now is that they put them both on the same track instead of having them at the same kind of orientation. The other thing is that if you group them, it would still doesn't solve the problem. The other issue is that if you want to select a layer and you just kind of, let's say I want to move it and scale it. Okay. Well, how do I select both of the layers? Right now, as far as I know, and please let me know if you know of a way, we cannot select both of them together and scale them. We can select them by using this here, the timeline edit. Look at this, it's pretty cool. It's crazy. It's one of the coolest things you can see. It's just amazing, right? So we're going to be using this amazing writing tool, if you must. It doesn't really do writing, to basically select these layers. And that's how we select them. But once you are on the timeline edit mode, you cannot do the scaling thing. If you deselect, it doesn't show, but if you move this part here, now it shows. Okay, by the way, in case you didn't know, 2 fingers will undo and 3 fingers would redo. Undo with 2 fingers, 3 fingers tap to redo. Okay, so apparently there's no way to move both of them and scale them at the same time unless you want to do it manually, like this, and then this, and then it would be inconsistent, especially if you are scaling down. Okay, what is the solution? One of the solutions which I definitely want you to learn in this video is grouping. So you select these 2 layers and then you click and hold, and then you go into group. For some reason it keeps snapping the trigger here to a new track instead of sticking on the group itself, which is kind of annoying. Now that I have this here and I deselect that timeline, once I move this thing here, the trigger or the timeline trigger, now I can actually move it and scale it down with uniform scaling. I can also click on the lower border and do some distortion, and the right or left border to do this horizontal distortion. Also, here's something that you need to know. You click on one of the corners and then you get that kind of curvature. That curvature is rotation. Now you're gonna be wondering, okay, so the rotation is working this way. It's kind of annoying that the anchor point is there. Well, you can click on these 3 dots and edit the anchor. And now you can move the anchor wherever you want. Hit done. Now when you tap on the corner and you go into the rotation, it's gonna be moving this way. Okay, all of this is great, right? And then you're gonna be thinking, okay, I got the right trick for this. I am going to do the scaling that I want, and then I am going to ungroup. And then you get this. Wonderful. There is another way that you can scale in a consistent way, but that method is pretty painful. And the way to do it is by applying scale and move effects. And then you copy the same numbers from one layer to another, which could be extremely tedious, especially if you're working with multiple layers at the same time, like maybe 5 or 10 layers. That's a lot of numbers to copy over from one to another. But for this demonstration, I'm gonna go with the method that I'm gonna be showing you, which is basically changing the resolution from the original image and then grouping. By the way, if you wanna make sure you don't really accidentally do this kind of distortion, you can just click away and you can move it. So in this case here, I am comfortable making the movement without worrying about really the perfect placement, since I can just eyeball it. The part that is really bad to eyeball is the scaling, which can never be consistent unless we use numbers. Now I'm gonna put this layer below. This is the setup that I have. Okay, great. So what's next? Now what I want to make is a movement for this vehicle and pretty much moving forward. Before I continue, one of the comments I got on the previous video is what is the difference between the performance or the perform mode versus the regular keying. I'm gonna be using this at some point. It's basically, I'm gonna be moving the layer. Just by moving it, the timeline is gonna be moving and recording automatically. And now this is the movement. But if I'm not using the perform, what's gonna happen is that I'm gonna need to go to each keyframe and key it manually. That's the main difference. So my goal now is to break down the animation between this here and this. The track needs to be moving up and down. And notice how I made this mistake of making that. Apparently I kept that perform button, which recorded those animation keys. How do you delete them on this layer? You can double tap to get really close, and then I'm going to click and hold on the bar here. So here's the thing. This is the layer itself, or the track as they call it here, right? But this bar here is for the animation. So to delete all the animation, I'm not going to click on a specific key because that's going to allow me to only delete that specific key. Instead, I'm going to click on the whole track and then delete, move, and scale. That's going to delete all the animation that I have. Okay, great. Okay, so now my goal is to make this track to be moving really basic movement, but the focus is on the body itself, which is this one here. Let me undo, and I want to make sure I don't have the perform button activated yet. So no animation. And now what I want to do is shaking up and down. So click on the perform or performance button and then go up and down and throw it back. It's moving really, really slowly. So let me try this. So apparently, as you get kind of to pause it, it would be more effective that way. And in some cases, it might be easier to use your fingers. I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of preference. Okay, let's take a look now. I'm going to put the track on top just so I don't see that gap here. And the other thing I'm gonna do, double click, again, it's a very useful tool to just kind of get really close to a specific spot. I'm going to go and check any keys that are very close and make sure that they don't have like extreme movement. Notice when you hover that trigger, it's going to be highlighted to show you if you have a key or not. So it's lit here, the white, that means there is keyframe. If it's like that, it's not lit, then in that case there is nothing, right? So I'm going to go to that specific keyframe, this one. Let's say this one is making like an extreme movement maybe, or it's making the animation a little bit too kind of jittery. So click and hold, delete. Click and hold, and then you can also move that key. So to even that kind of movement between those two keys, I'll move it to the center. Meaning you can go here and say, well, I'll do the same here. Click and hold and then move it somewhere so it would have some sort of like even and consistent result. And remember, with 3 fingers you can swipe up to have a larger thumbnail, which is easier to observe. Okay, so snap it all the way back. Let's see what kind of movement I have. And it's good to have some irregularity because that is going to be based on the terrain this vehicle is moving over. Okay, so I'm good with this result now. I'm going to go and snap this so they would be on the same 15-second mark. Okay, so now that I like this result, what do I do next? I want to have the whole vehicle moving. Well, now is the time to use this wonderful, cool writing. I ruined it. Okay, I'm going to be selecting these two layers using this timeline edit and click and hold and then group. So inside that group, I do have the animation for that body. Click. I know what you want. You want something that is a bit more pronounced. So let's do that with the animation here. So before I go with the grouping, let me make the animation more interesting a little bit here. So in the beginning, it's pretty tame, pretty kind of cold. So I'm gonna select on that track, and I'm gonna, yeah, you can see here. This is one of the issues that I kind of repeatedly make that mistake, which is staying on the timeline edit, and then I try to click, nothing's happening. So you just uncheck. Now I'm going to select this track, and I'm gonna click the perform, and I'm going to make some more animation keys. And again, as I mentioned, apparently if you pause, then it would almost ensure, or it would basically ensure that you will have keyframes. So now let's uncheck the perform and hit play. All right, so the animation looks like this now. Now I'm going to be using this cool tool, cool writing tool. You can also use it to deselect. So it selects the unselected and deselects the selected. So now that I have them both selected, group, and then deselect the timeline edit, click on the track, and now when I play it looks like this. Alright, now that it's actually in a group, I can do the movement on the group itself. So I'm gonna click perform. Well, before that, let me select on the track and then go here and then click the perform, and then it's kind of cool because it shows you really the animation as you move, which can be extremely important, which I plan on demoing in the next video. Because if you're making a video about, let's say for instance, like thrusters going off and like burning more and faster, you might want to make the movement faster to go accordingly. So with that said, this is the movement. You can see each frame. It's pretty cool. Very nice app. Okay. Another thing you can do, this is also very important. Let's say this is good whatsoever and you can render it maybe. You can also definitely work with environment, which I plan on doing at some point in the next videos. But if you go and ungroup, okay, the movement is on the body, right? You want to dive deeper into the keys here, these ones. And you can see it gives you numbers and all this, but you click and hold on the whole thing and then expand, move, and scale. What does that mean? It means that it's going to give you in-depth information on the X movement, the Y movement. This one here is move and scale. That's going to be scale X. And this is going to be scale Y. And this is going to be for the orientation. So here's the thing. Let's say you created a movement. Specifically, I'm going to be using this example, for instance, the track. And I also want to highlight this feature that you should also keep in mind, which I believe I covered in the previous video. You go to the corner, you see the check mark here, you can click. Now we can focus on the track. The track or the track layer. So let's say you want to make a movement on that track. Let's say you want to make it to kind of make it feel like it's kind of jittery kind of tank track. I am going to make the following animation using the performance mode or perform mode. I'm going to be moving it right and left. Notice how you can make some really specific movement if you just pause every once in a while. Notice how it zooms out automatically, which is pretty cool. Okay, so let's say you made that movement, okay? Notice here the problem that I'm having in this case is that it's moving both up and down and right and left. Okay, so what's your goal? If your goal to be making the animation exactly this way, you're good. But if you want to only focus on right and left, then you don't want to have up and down. And this is exactly where you click and hold, go to expand, move, and scale. And then finally, you want to have that movement on the X, but not the Y. Click and hold, delete, translate, meaning that it's going to be deleting that specific translation which is on the Y. So now this is the only movement you have, and that is going to make the perform mode a lot more usable, because you may be thinking like, okay, apparently the performance is fantastic, it would record in real time, but the problem is that it's going to be eliminating my ability to control that restriction on just the X and Y. And then you might be going and making the manual animation, which could be a lot more time consuming. So with that in mind, now that you have the ability to expand and really figure out exactly which keys you want, which keys you don't want, now this is going to allow you to make exactly the animation movement that you want. And lastly, going here back to the track, I think this is going to be probably an extreme movement here, the right and left. You know what, it's kind of bothering me. Just delete translate. The movement of the vehicle body is really kind of, it has some really cool suspension feel. But what if you want something that is supposed to be kind of stiff? Something like Ford Mustang kind of vibration, muscle car vibration, where you want it to be like snappy. Because this is more like an EV sci-fi vehicle that I designed. And instead, in a snappy kind of result, you might want to go with different type of animation eases. So in this case here, I'm happy with it because it has eases. But if you go to set all eases, all easings, if you want ease in and out, this is how the movement is going to be. It's more smooth and more regulated if you must. But if you go here into the set all easings and go linear, it tends to be more snappy, right? So if you have like a muscle car in this case, and not some sort of like sci-fi EV vehicle, then you want to go in that case with linear. With that said, I hope this video was helpful, and I do plan on making in-depth videos later for other features, just to help you understand exactly how they work, and also to motivate myself to learn the application better. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please let me know, because that helps me on really finding certain things that I should look into. And since the iPad is going really low on energy, I might not do the perspective one, but I'm just gonna do it now, and if the iPad dies, just ignore it, okay? All right, so from here on, I am going to take the audio recording off. And thanks again for watching, and have a good one, and happy Thanksgiving.